Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Thursday, April 13, 2023. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon here on the East Coast of the United States. Colonel MacGregor joins us now. Colonel, as we're speaking, or in the past couple of minutes, the FBI has arrested the person at whom the government is pointing fingers as a probable source for the leak of the Pentagon documents. The documents, as I understand it, revealed a lot of information embarrassing to the government. Before we get into whether or not this is the right person and how they caught him and was he part of some gamer group, what is your view on the damage to the credibility of the government, by which I mean the Pentagon under Joe Biden, caused by the release of these documents?
Well, as you point out, there are two crimes. The first one is the one that you're referring to, the release of the documents, for which there is no excuse, stiff penalties under the law. If this is the individual who did it, he'll end up going to prison for some period of time. The second crime, of course, involves that committed by our government and its senior leadership against the American people. And for that matter, you could argue against most of the people that are in the countries that belong to NATO, because this has exposed the lying on a scale that we haven't seen really since the Pentagon Papers. In fact, you could make an argument in some ways this is worse. Now, you and I know that if people have watched you or watched others, not just me, but others, you know who they are, Larry Johnson, Brother Ritter, and so forth, none of this is news. What's in those documents are the kinds of things that we've been saying for many months. We've all been called Putin agents. We've been crucified in the press, ridiculed all over the place as traitors and God knows what else. All we've done is tell the truth. That's a very serious crime. And I don't know, when you say how much damage, well, first of all, most of this information, as far as I can tell, is secret and then so-called no foreign. Need to understand that if you want the kind of information that are in these documents that are classified secret, you can find it out through open source. You don't need satellites and extensive collection systems to get to it. That said, some of this information, I have the impression, is TS, or close to top secret, in which case collection devices, the means of acquiring information, human and otherwise, could be at risk, in which case it's serious damage. But I think the serious damage is outweighed by the good, to be blunt, because it's finally reaching the broad public. They need to know that virtually from the beginning, people in this government at every level have lied to them. The American people need to stop it. Only they can do it.
I mean, it goes without saying that my hat is off to you, Colonel. I agree with you 100%. As I understand the documents, we'll put aside what they say about Egypt and Israel and North Korea. But what they say about Ukraine is the government knows it's a losing battle that Ukraine can't win. That's the takeaway that I get. The government recognizes a kill ratio of 7-1. The Russians are killing 7 Ukrainian troops for every 1 Russian that the Ukrainians kill. The Ukrainian air defenses are so degraded they'll be down to 0 or useless by late May or early June. And the Secretary of Defense knew all this when he made the following statements to Senator Roger Wicker of the Senate Armed Services Committee. I would like you to tell me if it's any possible way that what he said can be reconciled with what we now know he knew at the time he said it. Take a listen.
With regard to your optimism about Ukraine having the upper hand, that is what you told me yesterday.
It is. Now, Ukrainians have inflicted significant casualties on the Russians, and they have depleted their inventory of armored vehicles in a way that no one would have ever imagined. And so now we see Russia reaching for T-54s and T-55 tanks because of the level of damage that the Ukrainians have inflicted on them. And we have, in the meantime, been...
And reaching for those tanks demonstrates what to you, sir?
It demonstrates that their capability is waning. And we've continued to witness them be challenged with artillery munitions and other things, and they're reaching out to Iran, they're reaching out to North Korea. I think, we'll see an increase in the fighting in the spring as conditions for maneuver improve.
Do you believe there's a real chance for significant Ukrainian advancements between now and the beginning of winter?
I believe there's a chance, and we're doing everything that we can do to ensure that they have their best opportunity to be successful, Senator.
Now, the documents hadn't been revealed to the public at the time he said that, but the documents are dated February and early March. It's almost inconceivable he didn't know what was in them at the time he was making what, in my view, and I'm happy to hear yours, a representation that is 180 degrees from the documents.
Yes, it's unambiguous, Judge. The Secretary of Defense lied. He's not the Lone Ranger. He's got plenty of people working with him and around him who have lied publicly. So is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. I suspect that if you go trace it through European Command, the Supreme Commander of Europe is probably also signed on for the same lies. We have to understand that this is part of the problem that has evolved or developed for many decades. The senior leadership thinks it has a duty to lie because the political leadership has said it's vital that you do so. No one stands up and says, by the way, it doesn't matter what the Ukrainians do. They have no chance of winning a war with Russia. Everyone with a lick of common sense knew that back in January of last year, for God's sakes. And then on top of that, you have this relentless nonsense coming out that the Russians are incompetent, the Russians are stupid, the Russians are corrupt, the Russians can't do anything, the Russians don't want to fight, the Russians are war criminals. 99% crap. What have we heard about the Ukrainians? They're all supermen. Everyone's a Medal of Honor winner. They're inflicting huge casualties. The opposite was always the truth.
Here's what we've heard about the Ukrainians. Here's what we've heard about the Ukrainians this morning. And you're certainly not going to hear it from the Pentagon or the CIA, from our friend Cy Hirsch, that the Ukrainian military, diplomatic, and political leadership has skimmed $400 million from the cash that Joe Biden has sent over there. And when the director of the CIA, Director Burns, went over there to talk to President Zelensky, he named by name, he had a list of 35 generals who did the skimming, and President Zelensky's name was on the list as well. President Zelensky proceeded to fire 10 of the generals and do nothing to the others, because this type of skimming is well known and well understood. This is taxpayer dollars, or to be precise, money borrowed in the taxpayer's name. The Congress has authorized the president to send over there, which he sent as wire transfers to Ukrainian banks and as cash in those huge cargo planes that the Air Force has.
Yes, and we have covered this many times, talking about the corruption, the disappearance of equipment, and hundreds of millions of dollars in cash into all sorts of places. And by the way, inside the Ukrainian army, this reaches all the way down to the level of lieutenant colonel. You've got people at every level who are pocketing cash, and the soldiers know it. If you go on Telegram and catch the videos posted by Ukrainian soldiers before they're removed, you can hear them talk about it. Ukrainian soldiers know this. Why are we hearing Ukrainian soldiers say the first thing we've got to do is go back and hang Zelensky and his crew? We want to get there before the Russians do. That's been coming through off and on for months. They know that they've been betrayed.
How reasonable is it to suspect that a 25-year-old enlisted Air National Guardsman could possibly have had access to documents of this level of security, could possibly have shared them with a group of teenagers? This could possibly have gone on for months before the government caught it. Or stated differently, could this 21-year-old possibly have acted on his own?
Well, let's be frank. This makes the Pentagon look like a substantial component of the larger clown show that constitutes the government in Washington these days. I don't have an immediate answer, except that I can tell you that I have worked with 25-year-olds and 24-year-olds and 23-year-olds in the Army who were very reliable, who would never have done such a thing, who understood the gravity of the situation. So I cannot say, as a matter of generalization, that you shouldn't allow anyone of the age of 25 or 26 or anything else to handle this. That's just unfair.
Right.
I don't know the background on this man. And again, you have officers that are appointed the task of evaluating individuals. I mean, they put them through an investigation. They ask hard questions and they determine whether or not someone is reliable. So you got to go back and find out who gave this man the access.
Here's an interview that the Washington